So, Chapter 4 of Two Blue Vortex has been released, and wow, what a doozy. So much got revealed in this chapter. I mean, to say that this chapter was about one thing would be a gross underestimation. That's kind of been the way that every single chapter of Boruto has gone. Every chapter of Two Blue Vortex, it feels as though there are 4 crucial plot points that happen, and we gotta talk about all of them. And while we will get around to talking about all of the key crucial points that happen throughout Chapter 4 of Two Blue Vortex, today we're gonna be focusing on one of those crucial points, and more specifically, the first one that happens. See, because only a couple of pages into Chapter 4, we got one of the craziest reveals maybe in Naruto history, as it was revealed to us that Boruto had inherited more from Minato than just the Rasengan. No, Boruto had also inherited Flying Raijin, because as the toad that Boruto placed on Code revealed to Boruto that Code had gone to the Ten Tails, Boruto, after presumably placing a Flying Raijin seal on said toad, used Flying Raijin to travel directly to that toad instantaneously, not only revealing to us that Boruto knows Flying Raijin, which is insane, but also instantaneously answering what has been one of the largest looming questions in the Naruto community for years, which is, can Flying Raijin travel between dimensions? As the car dimension and Earth/Konoha, where Boruto were, exist in separate dimensions. Thus, Boruto, in this one moment, which is supposed to be a massive reveal about how powerful he has become, also answered the age-old question of, could Minato get out of the Kamui dimension? That's really only important if you are either one of the people who argues about which fictional characters could beat other fictional characters that they never battled, or if you just have an infinite amount of curiosity like me. Because the logical response to seeing Boruto using Flying Raijin outside of is how did he learn that? And as it currently stands, there's a couple of possible answers. In fact, there's 3 possible answers. Now, 2 of the answers are kind of salacious and not all that likely, and the 3rd answer is probably what happened, but it's also not all that interesting. I mean, the downstream repercussions of it being true could be interesting, but as it currently stands, it's not all that interesting. But as we do with every video like this, we're gonna start with the ones that we believe aren't likely and slowly but surely work our way up to the ones that we believe are likely. Can't be showing you my hand immediately. But before we get to working our way towards anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you want to see me work my way up the ladder of becoming the best known anime YouTuber on this entire platform, go ahead and follow my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where I talk all anime not named Naruto or Boruto. And if you want to see me get even further up that ladder, guys, go ahead and follow my anime podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Or if you just want to look like somebody who cares about the anime ladder that is YouTube, guys, go ahead and meander into my merch store, otakusanonymous.net, where you can pick up some of the greatest anime t-shirts, sweatshirts, and sticker packs known to man. But before we get into all that, guys, today we gotta talk about our new sponsor to the page, Ridge. See, Ridge is currently undergoing one of its biggest sales of the year. And this holiday season, Ridge wants to help you redefine carry essentials. See, Ridge offers over 30 different colors for things like its wallets and key holders, with things like leather and metal also being viable options. On top of that, Ridge understands how important things like your credit cards and your keys can be. And thus, with every relevant package they sell, they offer an optional AirTag package in order to make sure you never lose your valuables again. On top of that, the Ridge wallet can hold up to 12 cards and cash, all while being slimmer than your old wallet. All the meanwhile designed with RFID blocking materials to make sure that you're never digitally pickpocketed, while the Ridge key case holds 1 to 6 keys to make sure that your keys never jingle again. However, if you order both of these things together, you get 30% off 2 incredible products for 1 great price. And with every product coming with a 99-day risk-free trial, and there being over 80,000 5-star reviews on Ridge's website, how can you say no? So what are you guys waiting for? Shop the holiday sale by going to ridge.com/nchammer23 and get up to 30% off through December 20th. Use my link and enter yourself into the possibility of winning a Ridge package worth $4,000. It's time to upgrade how you carry. So, Boruto learned one of the hardest to master jutsus in the entirety of Naruto. A jutsu so difficult that the only people we've ever seen pull it off were 2 Hokage, and one of those Hokage, the second Hokage, Tobirama, was the man who created it. So in actuality, it was only ever really learned by one important character. Now, there are a couple of background characters that are theorized to have known Flying Thunder God, but we're not talking about them. What we are going to talk about is the fact that Flying Thunder God is so difficult that Hiruzen, whose nickname was the Professor because he knew every technique of the leaf, couldn't use Flying Raijin, stating simply that it was out of his grasp. So if Hiruzen, one of the most knowledgeable ninjutsu users of all time, can't learn Flying Raijin, then that should speak to just how difficult it is to pull off this jutsu. And yet, while Boruto has clearly admitted the fact that he isn't as talented as Minato in the usage of Flying Thunder God, as when he's using it to jump to code, he tells the toad that's talking to him to be quiet because he's not as skillful as his grandpa, still being able to use this technique, find his seals between dimensions, and jump between dimensions implies that he's at least okay at it. So will Boruto become the next Yellow Flash? Probably not. But can he absolutely use it to get out of emergency situations? Yeah. He's already done that. But if the only two important characters we've ever seen use Flying Raijin are Minato and Tobirama, who are both dead, who exactly was teaching Boruto? Well, I know I technically said earlier that there was 3 possibilities. I've done some light Googling to try and fill out one of my other theories, and I've realized there's 4 possibilities. And the other theory I just found actually makes a fair amount of sense. But does it make more sense than the original best theory that I had? I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. 90% of the time, I have no idea what I'm doing. But enough about all that. Let's get into our first theory, which admittedly is a bit silly, but wow, would it be sick? And there actually might be a little evidence to prove that it could have happened. And that's because our first theory is that Minato has returned. Now, I'm not saying that Minato has rolled the rock from the cave that he was buried in and returned to Boruto as the second coming of the 4th Hokage, because while that would be absolutely incredible, there are other means to bring people back in the Naruto universe, most specifically Edo Tensei. Stick with me here. Everybody on Earth, outside of people like Sarada and Sumire, has come under the brainwashing of Ada, and they now all believe that Boruto is the person who killed Naruto and that Kawaki is Naruto's son. However, technically, that only applies to people that are living. There'd really be no reason to brainwash the dead, even if you could brainwash the dead. And therefore, if hypothetically you needed somebody in your corner that wasn't brainwashed into thinking that you're the bad guy, where would you go? Well, if your father's been thrown into the Daikokuten and is inaccessible for the next, I don't know, 80 or so chapters, and your sensei has just been bitten by a claw grime and is now part Ent, I personally would bust out my Ouija board to find my incredibly powerful grandfather who will believe me. But I know, this raises the very logical question of, okay, Nick, who taught Boruto how to use Edo Tensei? Because more likely than not, it's not Kosen Koji. It's not like Jiraiya understood how to use Edo Tensei. And it's not like Amado would program the information of Edo Tensei into Kosen Koji's head, because we technically don't even know if Amado knows how to use Edo Tensei. In fact, it's probably safe to assume that he doesn't know how to use it, because he's so obsessed with the concept of Jiraiya. If he could just bring Jiraiya back, he probably would have done that. But then again, Edo Tensei is like an abomination against God, but then again, so is cloning. So it's relatively safe to assume that in the scenario, it's not Kosen Koji either doing the Edo Tensei or teaching Boruto how to do it. However, it is a definite possibility that Sasuke knows how to do it, because Sasuke lived with Orochimaru for 3 years and was present when Orochimaru used Edo Tensei to bring the 4 Hokage back to life. And considering the fact that Sasuke is a wielder of the Sharingan, something that allows him to copy all ninjutsu, taijutsu, and genjutsu that he sees while his Sharingan is activated, there is genuinely no reason for us to believe that Sasuke doesn't know how to use Edo Tensei. And therefore, it's a possibility that Sasuke could have taught Boruto how to use Edo Tensei, which would be like a really good idea, because let's imagine that you're a rogue shinobi wandering around with a rogue shinobi child, and you are this rogue shinobi child's uncle, and the entire world wants your nephew dead. I know they're not actually related. You get it. You understand that there's a fairly large possibility that you're gonna have to put your life on the line for said nephew. However, fortunately in Naruto, death does not have to be the end. And therefore you teach this rogue shinobi child how to bring you back in case you ever die, so you can continue on in your journey of protecting said rogue child. And thus, because Sasuke taught Boruto how to use Edo Tensei, or just did it himself, Minato was able to come back for a brief amount of time. And in that brief amount of time, he was able to teach Boruto how to use Flying Raijin. However, considering the fact that Edo Tensei is an abomination against God, and Minato would probably want to go back to the Pure Lands to be with Kushina, they released them eventually. And while this theory does sound kind of fantastical, there is a slight hint of possibility in it, strictly because of how Boruto talked about Minato. See, when Boruto was trying to focus on finding the seal that he put on the toad that he put on Code, or just the seal that he put on Code, we don't really know. And when Kosen Koji is yapping at him through the medium of the toad he put on Boruto, Boruto tells Kosen Koji to be quiet for a little because he isn't skillful like his grandfather, which is weird. Not super weird, but still a little weird. See, while there is technically the possibility that Boruto could have heard about how skillful his grandfather is using Flying Raijin, have we ever seen anybody talk to Boruto about Minato? Like, I get the conversations could happen off screen, and like there's probably a fair amount of people who are like, oh my god, your grandfather was a legend, but it feels more like something that somebody would say about somebody that they've seen be skillful at something. Some summoning. That's really, unfortunately, all the evidence we have to substantiate this possibility. And therefore, it's highly likely that Minato was never brought back using Edo Tensei. We'll probably never see Edo Tensei used again. But it would be kind of cool. Imagine grandson and grandfather teaming up to save the middle part. But that's not the only fantastical theory I got for you, because we also got time travel. See, ever since a time-traveling turtle was introduced during an anime canon arc in Boruto, everything has the possibility of being explained away with time travel. And for those of you who didn't watch this anime canon arc, essentially when Urshiki was flying around the world to try and collect the chakra of all 9-tailed beasts to get the gang back together, well, he realized that he wouldn't have too much of an issue with collecting the chakra of tailed beasts 1 through 8. He realized that collecting the chakra of the 9th-tailed beast would be kind of a problem, mostly because he fully understood that Naruto was way stronger than him. And thus Urshiki decided to use an ancient Otsutsuki artifact, a turtle that once you pump an insane amount of chakra into it allows you to slide through time, with the idea being that Urshiki would go back in time to when Naruto wasn't nearly as strong and then kill him then and extract Kurama's chakra. Now this doesn't work out for Urshiki, as Boruto, Sasuke, Jiraiya, and Naruto end up defeating Urshiki and he dies at the hands of Jiraiya, but it does kind of work out for the time-traveling turtle, as after the time-traveling turtle returns Jiraiya and Boruto back to the future, they tell the time-traveling turtle, who still has enough chakra to go through time, that it should go on a journey of self-exploration, which was a somewhat convenient way to explain away the whole time travel possibility. But since Boruto's anime is canon to at least the anime universe, this means that that time-traveling turtle does technically exist, at least in the anime. Now, say what you will about anime canon and how it's basically just filler, but it is still canon, kind of. And thus there is always the distinct possibility that that time-traveling turtle decides that it's found out enough about itself and comes back to hang out with the people who decided to set it free, Boruto and Sasuke, who are, once again, on a little journey trying to save Naruto. However, upon realizing that they didn't have nearly enough allies in the current time, they decided to slide back in time to when nobody would know them. And that is, when Minato was alive. See, because when Minato was alive, Sasuke and Naruto weren't even born yet, which means that people definitely didn't know who Boruto was. And while technically a version of Jiraiya that exists somewhere around Naruto's time skip knows that Boruto and Sasuke are time travelers, this version of Jiraiya wouldn't know that because that wouldn't happen for another 13 or so years. And thus the only person who could point at them and be like, oh yeah, familiar faces, wouldn't even know them yet. And thus it's a possibility that Boruto and Sasuke, leveraging the good nature of Minato, had him take them under their wing as an ally. And during that time, Minato was able to teach Boruto how to use Flying Raijin. However, that is once again a very slim possibility, all but probably impossible. You gotta cover your bases here because who knows if that turtle's ever coming back. So let's go ahead and get to talking about theories that might actually happen. I mean, while these theories are a bit more boring than Minato showing back up to the medium of Edo Tensei, or Boruto and Sasuke going back in time to hang out with the 4th Hokage, or I guess they could go hang out with the 2nd Hokage. He would probably be less excited about that than Minato, though. Uchiha. Then again, that explains why Sasuke didn't learn Flying Raijin. These last two theories do definitely have a distinct possibility of being how Boruto actually learned Flying Raijin. And I would say, inarguably, that the more boring of the two possible theories is that Boruto managed to steal the Forbidden Scroll that contained the knowledge on how to use Flying Raijin. See, as we all know, Flying Raijin was created by Tobirama, but in order to create a jutsu, one has to write it down on a scroll first. You don't just kind of like think of a jutsu and then do it. Well, there is a possibility that somehow you're able to mold your chakra in a way that you've never molded it before. People who create jutsus usually either write them on a scroll prior or write them on a scroll after their creation. But usually the scroll writing comes first, and especially in the cases of incredibly intricate and difficult jutsus like Flying Raijin. See, we understand that Tobirama was an absolute genius and a man who dedicated a large part of his life to formulating powerful jutsu, like the Shadow Clone Jutsu, Flying Raijin, and Edo Tensei. However, Tobirama made these jutsu prior to the foundation of Konoha, and thus he made these 3 jutsus truly just to make himself better at killing Uchiha. And boy oh boy did he achieve just that. I mean, ask Izuna. However, after the foundation of Konoha, Tobirama realized that the jutsus that he made were incredibly dangerous and powerful, and thus 2 out of the 3 incredibly iconic jutsus he made, he forbid. And those 2 jutsus that he forbid were Flying Raijin and Edo Tensei. Now, there is a common misconception that he forbid Shadow Clone Jutsu. However, he did not forbid Shadow Clone Jutsu, he forbid multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu. But also, a jutsu being forbidden means a grand total of nothing in the Naruto universe. So if you forbid it or not, really doesn't matter. Well, that's not necessarily true, because if a jutsu is forbidden, it won't be taught, actively. And because Tobirama decided to forbid Edo Tensei and Flying Raijin, it wasn't taught in things like the Ninja Academy. Not that the Ninja Academy would teach either of those abilities in the first place, because Edo Tensei requires dead bodies and Flying Raijin is incredibly difficult to pull off. However, there have been plenty of instances of people breaking into Konoha's libraries to steal forbidden scrolls. In fact, quite literally, the first episode of Naruto is about that. And thus, what would be more ridiculously fitting than Boruto breaking into Konoha to steal the forbidden scroll that was Flying Raijin. In fact, the only thing that would be more fitting than that is that when Sasuke gets bitten by the claw grime is actually protecting Boruto as he's running away with said scroll, as there's a possibility that Sasuke identified that Boruto would be able to figure out Flying Raijin and assumed that him learning Flying Raijin would increase his chances of survival, and thus Sasuke assisted Boruto in the acquirement of said scroll. However, specifically because Code keeps a very close eye on Konoha, this is when Boruto and Sasuke blew their cover to Code. And thus that fight that happened 1 year into the time skip happened after Boruto broke into Konoha to steal the forbidden scroll. And thus, much in the same way that Naruto was protected from a giant demon shuriken by the likes of Iruka, Boruto is protected from a claw grime by the likes of Sasuke. And then Boruto spends the next 2-ish years training in the way of Flying Raijin to make sure that the next time that he sees Code, or really any claw grimes, he's prepared. And really, to me, this theory makes a good amount of sense. I mean, there's a tried and true way to learn jutsus, and it's to read the scrolls that they're written on. Somebody like Sasuke would absolutely know where the forbidden scrolls were kept in Konoha, and even if it wasn't Sasuke, there's a possibility that Kosen Koji would also know where the forbidden scrolls were kept in Konoha. And therefore, there's an equal possibility that Kosen Koji was the one who directed Boruto in the right direction. But why would Kosen Koji know where the forbidden scrolls in Konoha were? Well, that's because Kosen Koji is Jiraiya's clone. And I know a lot of you are saying,
Okay, why would that tell Kosen Koji where the forbidden scrolls were?
well, because clones in the Naruto universe work a bit differently than they work in our world. See, let's say hypothetically you were to take some of my blood and clone me. Well, if you grew that clone to 27 years old, you would get a human that looked a lot like me and who sounded like me and maybe even thought like me, as there's been a couple of studies that have shown that identical twins who were separated at birth not only still look like each other, but also act a lot like each other, giving a lot more weight to the nature side of things than the nurture side of things. Though obviously, nurture is very important. Nature refers to your genetics, nurture refers to your upbringing. If you're curious about it, just look up epigenetics identical twin studies. Really cool stuff. However, in the Naruto universe, if you clone somebody, not only do they look like you and sound like you, they have your abilities and maybe your memories. The reason that I say maybe your memories is because this hasn't been confirmed yet, though it has been hinted at. As in both the Boruto anime and manga, we've seen Kosen Koji break into Konoha. And when it came to Kara members, Kosen Koji was the perfect person to break into Konoha, because Kosen Koji, as a perfect clone of Jiraiya, has Jiraiya's chakra signature. And thus, when Kosen Koji entered Konoha, he didn't set off any alarms, as Jiraiya's chakra signature had already been registered and accepted into the Konoha Big Chakra Bubble Shield database. You know, one Ino runs. However, when Kosen Koji came to Konoha, he said that it felt eerily familiar. Well, more specifically, he said that he knew Konoha from his past, which is implied to us as readers and watchers who have never seen Kosen Koji in Konoha prior to this moment. But the reason that Kosen Koji knows Konoha like the back of his hands is because he has Jiraiya's memories, or at least he has some of Jiraiya's memories. Because obviously if Kosen Koji had all of Jiraiya's memories, he would basically be Jiraiya. He'd be trying to peep on women, he would have run to Naruto and told him Jiraiya's last words, and so on and so forth. However, Kosen Koji appears to be nothing like Jiraiya, which could imply a couple of things. One, whatever tinkering that was done to Kosen Koji by Kara altered his memories so that he doesn't act like Jiraiya, which would obviously be incredibly advantageous because otherwise he would just run away to Naruto. Or two, Kosen Koji as a clone technically shouldn't access the memories of Jiraiya. However, because of possibly epigenetics and the fact that he has Jiraiya's literal brain, slowly but surely as Kosen Koji interacts with things that Jiraiya would recognize, more memories come to him. And I actually believe that that is the most likely scenario. I believe that as Kosen Koji comes face to face with things like Konoha or Naruto or possibly even Boruto, the memories of Jiraiya will come rushing back to him. Because the technical design of Kosen Koji as a clone was not to recreate Jiraiya. It was to create an entity like Jiraiya that could be used as a weapon against Jigen, because Amado had such an insane amount of respect for Jiraiya, and believed that the world was better off with Jiraiya in it. However, surely based off the fact that Kosen Koji has decided to team up with Boruto, it seems relatively obvious, at least to me, that Kosen Koji recognizes something in Boruto that reminds him of Naruto. And therefore, it's a possibility that after Sasuke was turned into a claw grime, Kosen Koji found Boruto, and since Boruto reminded him of Naruto, memories from Jiraiya kicked in, and Kosen Koji stepped in as his new sensei. And this would be somewhat corroborated by the fact that Kosen Koji was incredibly worried worried about Boruto in chapter 4, specifically screaming at him and telling him to never push himself that hard. Though one could very easily make the argument that Kosen Koji didn't want Boruto to lose because if Boruto lost in that scenario, the entire Earth would have died, himself very much included. But if Kosen Koji is able to access the entirety of Jiraiya's memories, and I'm assuming that spending 2 full years with Boruto would allow him to access a good amount of Jiraiya's memories, there is a somewhat distinct possibility that he's able to access Jiraiya's memories about jutsu. And in fact, one could say that those are probably the first memories he ever unlocked, as Kosen Koji has the ability to use a lot of Jiraiya's abilities, like toad summonings and toad oil bombs. And while Kosen Koji does definitely have a couple of jutsus that Jiraiya simply did not, like the true fire of Samadhi, those would more likely than not come from the tinkering done by Kara. But a lot of you are probably saying,
yeah, but Jiraiya didn't know how to use Flying Raijin.
And you're right, Jiraiya didn't know how to use Flying Raijin, at least as far as we know, because if he did know how to use Flying Raijin, he definitely could have got himself out of that battle against Nagato. However, Jiraiya doesn't necessarily have to be able to pull off Flying Raijin to teach it to somebody else. So let's say hypothetically I buy you a car, but the car doesn't have power steering, and for some reason I'm not strong enough to yank that wheel in either direction. But not you. You're ripped. Sam Sillick and Tom Haviland shudder at the mention of your name. I can tell you that you gotta push the acceleration to go, you gotta push the brake to stop, there's the shifter, and boy oh boy, you gotta spin that wheel. And then boom, I've taught you how to drive. Sort of. Now you just gotta use your 37-inch biceps to turn that massive wheel, and boom, you're driving. And if Kosen Koji was able to access the entirety of Jiraiya's memories, there's really no reason he wouldn't be able to do this for Boruto. See, because here's the thing, while Jiraiya couldn't use Flying Raijin, he definitely understood it. I mean, Minato was his student after all, and it was revealed to us in Minato's prequel story, back when Minato was supposed to be somewhere around 14, battling in the Second Great Shinobi World War, that not only could he use Flying Raijin, but he could also use Flying Raijin incredibly well. As when Jiraiya, Minato, and a couple of other filler ninjas found themselves in a battle against the Jinchuriki forms of Han and Roshi, Minato used Flying Raijin to get all of them out of the way of the tailed beast bombs. So not only could Minato use Flying Raijin already, but he could also use it so well that he could get 4 people away from tailed beast bombs. And thus Minato must have been using Flying Raijin since he was, oh, I don't know, 11, 12, all very much within the capacity of him being one of Jiraiya's genin/chunin. And therefore, even though Jiraiya himself couldn't pull off Flying Raijin, he definitely watched Minato learn how to use it. And thus, much in the same way that Orochimaru knows how to become a Snake Sage but can't do it himself, Jiraiya would know how to use Flying Raijin but couldn't do it himself. And thus, if Kosen Koji accessed all of those memories of Minato learning how to use Flying Raijin, not only could he teach Boruto how to use Flying Raijin, but he could also tell Boruto just about how skillful his grandfather was at it. As who would know better than Jiraiya/Kosen Koji? And that, to me, is really the only answer as to where did Boruto learn Flying Raijin, because not only is it the most logical answer, but also narratively it makes the most sense. Why does it make the most sense narratively, you ask? I'll tell you. See, we kind of have a saying on this page that Kishimoto never does anything for nothing, and while one could look at Kishimoto reviving Jiraiya, one of the fan base's favorite characters through the medium of Kosen Koji, as a little bit of fan service, and if they were to think that, they wouldn't be wrong, but to assume that the height of the fan service that we're going to be receiving is Kosen Koji, aka Jiraiya, training Boruto, is a drastic underestimation. See, Kosen Koji training Boruto is awesome. It's obviously meant to mirror Jiraiya training Naruto. However, Kosen Koji having a relationship with Boruto, and that relationship being the foundation of Kosen Koji accessing the entirety of Jiraiya's memories, is all meant to build up to one of the last things that will happen in Boruto, which will be Kosen Koji meeting Naruto, as Kosen Koji and Naruto have already had near misses, with Naruto looking at Kosen Koji and thinking that he looks familiar. Those near misses are meant to show us that one day it won't be a miss at all, and that Naruto will one day be reconnected with his old sensei through the medium of his clone, who now not only has all of his memories, but also probably acts a lot more like him. And Naruto will get to see this new version of his old sensei raise his grandson, much like how Jiraiya stepped in to raise him. And thus, while Naruto will most likely be around to walk Boruto down the aisle when he marries either Sarada or Sumire, most likely Sarada, Kosen Koji, as Jiraiya, will finally be able to attend an Uzumaki wedding. Something that Naruto wanted, however, because Jiraiya had died, he asked Iruka to walk him down the aisle. So if you think that Kosen Koji being brought back is fan service, you're not thinking big enough, because you don't revive a fan favorite character without giving the biggest dollop of fan service known to man at the end of Boruto. So yes, not only was Kosen Koji responsible for teaching Boruto Flying Raijin, but also Kosen Koji teaching Boruto Flying Raijin by accessing Jiraiya's memories is supposed to creak open the door for one of the sweetest moments in the entirety of Naruto's universe. But then again, what do I know? I'm just the man who predicted the entirety of the 4th chapter's plot. What do you guys think? How do you think Boruto learned Flying Raijin? Tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Okay, here's my thing. Imagine in a hypothetical universe, instead of Naruto walking Boruto down the aisle, it's Kosen Koji as kind of a full circle moment of Naruto not being able to walk down the aisle with Jiraiya. However, would Naruto be like, no, Kosen Koji, you walk my son down the aisle, or is Naruto dead? I can see Kosen Koji walking Boruto down the aisle, like for a full circle moment, but like, why would it not be Naruto? Boruto has too many father figures, because like it could also be Sasuke, but then again, he would probably be walking Sarada down the aisle, and that's why I'm like, oh, Boruto has to marry Sarada, because if he doesn't marry Sarada, then like there's a possibility that Sasuke can walk him down the aisle.